Hi, North Decatur family. Brittany with you once again. I'm sorry I've missed you for the last couple of weeks. I have been busy putting together Vacation Bible School as a virtual experience. We had loads of fun, but I am very glad to be back with you this week as we continue walking through the book of Acts. As Patrick and Edry and Tyler have set us up this week, we are in chapter 12. We're about halfway through the stories that we're going to cover here in Acts, and I guess this is the point in Acts where things really start to get real, both for us as readers and for the followers of Jesus in those first days as the church was being built. Chapter 12 tells of the death of James, the brother of John, and the arrest of Peter. And Peter is set up, like Edry mentioned. This is done at the time of Passover. So we're supposed to think, just heads up, stories in the Bible that occur at Passover that happen over bodies of water, where there's crossings, where there's baptisms. All of these things are supposed to remind you of the stories that have come before. So the story of the original Passover, of the slaves in Egypt being rescued by God and taken into the desert and eventually delivered to the promised land. Jesus and his death and resurrection during Passover. All of these things would be brought to mind for the original writer and hearers of these stories, and should be brought to mind for you as well. When you hear of a story happening at Passover, you're supposed to think of Christ. You're supposed to think of the mighty works of God and those stories that you were told as a child in Bible study and Vacation Bible School, perhaps. So it is Passover. Peter is arrested, and it says in verse 5, but prayer for him was being made fervently. So Peter is arrested and held because of their religious traditions. They are not going to put him to death during the Passover. He's held, and while he's being held, on the very night when Herod was going to bring him forward, it says in verse 6, Peter is mysteriously and miraculously rescued from prison by an angel. And I think it's easy in stories like this to dismiss the veracity of the story, to go, that could never happen. Chains just don't fall off. Guards don't just not see a person. People don't walk through bars. This is not possible. And so there's no point in studying a story like this in the year 2020, because things like this don't happen. And I challenge you to do what we do in the movies all the time. Suspension of disbelief. Read the story, believing what it says to be true, and then see what comes of it after that. Don't dismiss it just because it doesn't sound rational. Faith in God is not always rational. Loving people that are mean and hateful is not a rational thing to do, but Jesus does it. And that gives me hope that I can do it. Loving people that don't take the same safety precautions that I take in my life is not rational. The rational thing is to go, you are making my life harder, and so I am going to be angry at you, and I'm going to hate you, and I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to do everything I can to stop you living your life the way you want to live it and make you live the life I want you to lead. But that is not the example that Jesus sets for us, and it's not the example that his early followers set for us in these books, in the book of Acts, in the Acts of the Apostles. That is not what we see. These men over and over again choose the path of Jesus. They choose love over hate. They choose forgiveness, and they let God do God's work. And I think that's what this story reminds us of. It reminds us to let God do the work of God. It's not our job to change people, and it's not our job even to change the big injustices in the world. Our job is to love each person set before us and to shine the light of Christ, to show them that there is another way, that we don't just have to hate one another. We don't have to fight one another all the time. We could just choose to love. We could love them because God loves them and for no other reason. We don't need a reason to love. We just need God. So, in our verses today, as I wrap up quickly, in our verses today, Peter is freed from jail and he goes to his people, to the house of Mary, the mother of John, who was also called Mark, where many were gathered. And a servant girl comes. It says her name is Rhoda. Rhoda comes to the door and she hears his voice and she knows his voice. And she goes, "It's Peter!" And she runs inside and she tells everybody, "Peter's knocking at the door." And they go, see, they didn't believe either. They said, "That's not possible. Peter's in jail. You're a crazy person." And then they think maybe Peter has been killed and it's Peter's spirit that has come. But they hear the physical knocking on the door and they go to him and it is Peter and they celebrate and he quiets them with a hand, it tells us. And he described to them how the Lord had led him out of prison. And he said, "Report these things to James and the brethren." And then he left and went to another place. Report these things. And that's your challenge. This week, look for the work of God, the wonderful and the miraculous and the mysterious. Look for the work of God in the world around you and report these things. Report them to James and the brethren. Report them to your family and your friends. And please report them to your church community. Comment below if something wonderful has happened to you, even if it wasn't miraculous. And of course, if there's ever a way that you are in need, reach out and let us know so that we can be of use to you as well. I love you all dearly, and I miss you, and I hope you are well. Bye.